Being behind isn't just a math problem, it's a nervous system problem. If money makes your chest tighten, if you feel late and ashamed because you're not quite prepared for retirement or next month for that matter, don't click away. This is the part nobody says out loud. We're going to talk about what money triggers and how shame keeps people stuck. And I want to start there because if we don't, we're going to end up in the same old conversation people have been having for decades. The one where somebody lists the basics, somebody else nods, and the person who's actually scared goes quiet. Because the basics aren't the point. Most people who feel behind aren't confused about what they should do. They're scared of what it means that they didn't do it earlier. They're scared of what the numbers will confirm. They're scared of the look on someone's face if they tell the truth. They're scared of their own regret, which can feel sharper than the problem itself. So when we say behind, let's be honest about what we mean. Behind is not just a gap in savings. Behind is a body that tenses up when you open the bank app. Behind is avoiding the mail because you can't take one more reality today. Behind is walking through a grocery store doing calculations you didn't used to have to do. Behind is hearing the word retirement and feeling exposed. And if you're over 50, behind comes with a particular kind of heat because time feels louder. Not in a dramatic way, in a practical way. It's not I'm doomed. It's I don't have the luxury of denial anymore. That is a nervous system experience, not a personal failure. Because the nervous system doesn't respond to spreadsheets, it responds to threat. And for a lot of people, money became tied to threat a long time ago. Not always because they were irresponsible. Sometimes because they grew up in a home where money meant tension, where money meant fighting, where money meant silence, where money meant we don't have it or don't ask. Sometimes because adulthood taught them that stability is fragile. One medical bill, one divorce, one layoff, one caregiving crisis, one rent increase, one car problem. Sometimes because they were the dependable one, the one who covered things, the one who helped, the one who didn't want to be a problem. And when you live long enough in that kind of reality, your body learns something. Money isn't neutral, money is loaded. So when you finally try to get serious, you don't just sit down calmly and make a plan. Your system reacts like you just walked into a room where you might be judged. That's why people do strange things around money. Not irrational things, protective things. Some people go into control mode. They get strict overnight. They swear off everything. They punish themselves. They build a plan that's so rigid it can't survive a real week. Some people go into avoidance. They don't look. They don't open. They don't call. They don't check. They tell themselves they'll do it when they feel stronger, but the truth is they're waiting for a feeling that doesn't arrive on its own. Some people go into panic. That's where the worst decisions happen. That's where somebody who's been responsible for decades suddenly makes one choice that costs them years because they were trying to escape the feeling of being behind. And some people go into people-pleasing. They overgive. They rescue. They keep saying yes because being needed feels safer than being stable. If any of that hits uncomfortably close, I'm not saying it to label you. I'm saying it because a lot of women have been taught to treat financial struggle like a moral flaw, like they should be embarrassed, like they should hide until they have a more respectable story to tell. But hiding is expensive. Hiding creates late fees. Hiding creates more debt. Hiding creates missed chances to negotiate. Hiding keeps you from asking questions you deserve to ask. Hiding keeps you from making calm decisions. And the older you get, the more expensive hiding becomes because time feels like a narrowing hallway. Now, I'm going to say something that may sound simple, but it's one of the most important distinctions a person can make. Shame is not the same as accountability. Shame says, this is who you are. Accountability says, this is what's happening. Shame makes you smaller. It makes you secretive. It makes you reactive. Accountability makes you clearer. It makes you direct. It makes you steady. So if you've been living with the shame of being behind, you may have mistaken shame for accountability. You may have thought, if I feel bad enough, I'll finally change. But feeling bad isn't a plan. Feeling bad is just pain. And pain doesn't automatically turn into discipline. Pain usually turns into survival. That's the nervous system again. Because when the body feels threatened, it starts looking for relief. And relief is where a lot of financial sabotage lives. Relief is the purchase you make that you don't even enjoy. You just enjoy the quiet in your chest for a moment. Relief is the I'll deal with it later that buys you one night of peace and costs you 6 months of stress. Relief is the fantasy of the one big move, the one opportunity, The one thing that will finally make you catch up. Let's talk about that fantasy for a second because it's a major trap. When you feel behind, slow progress can feel humiliating. Slow progress feels like admitting how far you have to go. So the mind starts bargaining. It starts hunting for something fast, something dramatic, something that will erase the gap and erase the shame at the same time. That's why people fall for gurus. That's why people take risky shortcuts. That's why people make big moves without support. They're not just chasing money, they're trying to escape exposure. They're trying to escape the story that being behind tells them about who they are. And we have to say this clearly, there are industries built on that feeling. Industries built on your urgency, your embarrassment, your desire to catch up quietly so nobody knows. Do this now. Last chance. You're running out of time. Don't miss the window. Some of that language is marketing, but to a nervous system that already feels behind, it lands like prophecy. Now, I want to slow down and make room for something people don't like to talk about because it complicates the story. Being behind is not always the result of poor choices. Sometimes being behind is the result of a life that has been expensive in ways nobody sees. Caregiving is expensive, health is expensive, divorce is expensive, starting over is expensive, helping family is expensive, living through layoffs is expensive, living through discrimination is expensive, living through an economy that keeps moving the finish line is expensive. And there's another kind of expense that doesn't show up on paper, the expense of being the reliable one, the one who holds it together, the one who doesn't ask for help, the one who should be fine. That role can steal years from a person quietly. So when you look at someone else and think, how are they ahead and I'm not? It's worth asking a harder question. What did they have that you didn't? Not to create bitterness, to create honesty. Some people had protection, a stable partner, family support, a job with benefits, health that held, a parent who left something behind. And yes, some people also made great choices. But if you don't account for protection, comparison becomes poison. Because you start treating your circumstances as a character verdict, and that's where shame gets unbearable. Because shame doesn't just say, you're behind. Shame says, you're behind because you're not the kind of person who gets it together. That's the lie. Now here's the part I think many women over 50 are secretly carrying, even if they don't say it out loud. It's not only fear, it's grief. Grief for a timeline you thought you'd have. There is a particular heartbreak in realizing you didn't get the version of stability you imagined you would grow into. You did the work, you survived, you raised people, you showed up, you kept going. And still there's this gap, and the gap isn't only money. The gap is the distance between what you believed adulthood would provide and what it actually did. If you've never let yourself name that grief, it can turn into something else. It can turn into harshness. It can turn into self-attack. It can turn into this constant internal scolding that sounds like discipline, but is actually mourning. And mourning is heavy. It makes everything feel harder than it should, including simple financial tasks. Because you're not just looking at numbers, you're looking at a story. You're looking at time. You're looking at all the moments you wish you could redo. Now, I'm not here to tell you to forgive yourself and move on. That's too easy to say and too hard to feel. I'm here to tell you something more practical. If you want stability, you have to stop letting shame be the main voice in the room. Not because shame is mean, but because shame is a terrible strategist. Shame creates urgency. Urgency creates sloppy decisions. Sloppy decisions create consequences. Consequences create more shame. That loop is how people stay behind. So the question becomes, what breaks the loop? Not motivation, but truth. But not brutal truth. Not get it together truth. A particular kind of truth that keeps your dignity intact. Truth that sounds like, this is where I am. This is what happened. This is what I've been carrying. This is what I avoided. This is what I'm afraid of. And I'm ready to look without humiliating myself. That last part is important, because many people think humiliation is what keeps them accountable. They think if they stop beating themselves up, they'll become lazy. But beating yourself up doesn't create consistency. It creates dread, and dread makes you avoid. So I want to offer a reframe you can hold in your hands. Numbers are not a verdict, they are information. A verdict says, you're guilty. Information says, here's the situation. If you can turn the numbers back into information, you can start making decisions without your nervous system hijacking the process. Now, I'm going to ask a few questions, not as homework, not as a worksheet, just as a way to locate yourself. When you say you're behind compared to who? What do you believe a good woman your age is supposed to have by now? What do you fear people would say if they knew the truth? And here's the deepest one. What does being behind mean about you as a person? Because that's the root. For some women, being behind doesn't mean I need more money. It means I'm a failure. I'm not safe. I'm going to be a burden. I don't have value. I should be ashamed. Those are not money beliefs. Those are identity beliefs. And if money is tied to identity, of course your body reacts like it's in danger. So let me separate something cleanly. Your net worth is not your worth. Your mistakes are not your identity. Your timeline is not a moral report card. And I'm not saying that to comfort you. I'm saying it because until you believe it, you will keep making decisions from a place of fear and exposure. And fear loves shortcuts. Fear loves hiding. Fear loves relief. Stability doesn't come from relief. Stability comes from being able to face reality without collapsing or attacking yourself. That's the nervous system again, because when your system can tolerate reality, you don't need fantasy. You don't need the big risky move. You can do what real adults do. You handle what's true, one piece at a time, without theatrics. Now, before we close, I want to speak to the person who's listening and thinking, okay, but you don't know my situation. You're right, I don't. So let's respect the reality of lived experience. Some people are behind because wages were low and costs were high. Some people are behind because they got sick. Some people are behind because they were supporting family. Some people are behind because they married someone who is not a partner, financially or otherwise. Some people are behind because they never learned. Some people are behind because they avoided. Some people are behind because the world didn't make it easy. And for most people, it's a mix. A mix is still real. And a mix still deserves dignity. This isn't about pity. It's about precision. Because when you're precise about why you're behind, you stop treating yourself like a mystery and a disgrace. You become a person with a history. And once you're a person with a history, you can make choices from adulthood instead of from shame. That's where we're going with this channel. Not how to get rich. How to stop letting shame and panic run your financial life. How to become the kind of woman who can tell the truth and stay standing. So I'll end with this. If you feel behind, don't use shame as proof you're serious. Use truth. Use a calm look. Use one honest sentence. And if you can't look yet, that's information too. That tells you something about what money represents to your body because, again, being behind isn't just a math problem. It's a nervous system problem. And nervous system problems don't get solved by yelling at yourself. They get solved by building the capacity to face reality without fear taking the wheel. That's the work. That's the real work. And that's what we're going to keep doing here. Whatever you do after this video, don't punish yourself for recognizing your life. No shame, no pretending. Because shame is not a strategy. Here we move with truth and what comes next. Don't forget to subscribe and like if this spoke to you. See you in the next episode.